thanks for being here, everyone. First of all, thank you to Cincy Magazine for just putting together this amazing award and for some reason choosing me to be honored. It really is an honor to be here, and also just kudos on promoting this event. Like, I saw a lot of hustle and grit and in their activities to get you all here today, so that's really cool. As I was sharing kind of with friends, some of friends and family, this award, and I'd share out the link, one of the most common responses I got was like, wow, those folks you're getting honored with, like, they're pretty significant. And I think it was really just a nice way of saying, how the heck are you getting this award, Tim, right? And the answer is like, I'm not sure, other than thanks God for putting me in this position. In all seriousness, the first person to thank, and I alluded to in the video, is my wife. I really believe spouses are one of the most unsung heroes in the entrepreneurial journey. They endure every bit as much hardship as founders do. And so, huge thanks first and foremost to Christy. And really for every spouse out there, like I said, I don't think you all get enough praise. And one of the pieces of advice I hear pretty often, I don't necessarily give this, is you see a young person and you hear people say like, hey, right now's the time to do it. Like, start this business before you're married, before you have kids, before. I get that, like, it's great advice. I totally understand the heart behind it. And I'm also really glad I didn't start a company until I had a spouse. Like, I seriously believe there's something about marriage that kind of unlocks a man in a unique way when they're partnered with the right person. And so, thank you, Christy. The other thing I want to mention in the video, which is real, is co-founders and early employees. Like, I think behind every great company, there were great co-founders and there were great early employees, probably great mentors, oftentimes great investors. Like, all those folks really lift up an organization, and I've been lucky enough to be a part of more than I can rattle off the names of today, but I just want to say, like, that is truly why I'm here today, is not because of my own doing, but because of the support around me. With the thanks out of the way, just a couple big kind of ideas I wanted to share, some thoughts about like why I feel like I'm here. Two big ideas. The first is, I have this kind of mantra I've started adapting and living by, and it's just simple. It's not on my power, not to my glory. And I first heard this from one of the co-founders of Crossroads Church, and he basically said, like, this is a prayer he would say regularly. It's a guy named Brian Wells, one of the 7 people who started one of the largest churches in our country now. And he said, as I would go out to preach, I would just say this simple prayer, like, Lord, not on my power, not to my glory. And for him, it just calmed him, reset his expectations, and said, like, I'm giving this to God, and I hope he uses me. And I've sort of adapted it. I found myself as I stepped out in entrepreneurship, like saying that prayer before a big meeting, or before a big pitch, or as I was trying to hire an employee or have a chance to speak in front of a crowd, I would say this prayer often. And I realized that I had actually adapted this as sort of like my personal mantra. So much so, in fact, that my first and only tattoo on my bicep is that. It's not on my power, not to my glory. And I think this is exemplified beautifully in Scripture, so I just want to share this because it's been impactful for me. So 1 Peter 4:11 says, if anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, or I read that as if anyone starts a company, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. To him be the glory and power forever. Amen. And I just think that's a beautiful way of saying, not on my power, not to my glory. So the second big idea is give before you get. And I think this is something I've always believed in, wanting to help other people, as probably most of us in here do. But I think really like 2 big impacts. So one was following the writings and books of Brad Feld, who helped start Techstars, and also was a huge part of growing the tech ecosystem in Boulder, Colorado. The second came from a book I bet most of you have read, which is called How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's by Dale Carnegie. And really all these things just kind of reinforce this idea that there is really great power in giving before you get. That means finding ways to want to help people without any expectation that that might impact you in return. And I think if I'm honest, like, that's why I'm here today. I love the work we're doing at Differential. We've had amazing success. We have an awesome team and trajectory and clients. But I think I'm probably here not necessarily for that, but more because of what I've become known for, which is giving of my time and energy to other entrepreneurs. And that goes through things like Coaching Accelerator, which I started within the first year of starting Differential when we had an awful lot to figure out ourselves. I kind of felt this call to start this accelerator, which meant, by the way, I had to figure out how do you start a nonprofit and fund that? How do you start a fund that's going to invest in tech companies? And all the while I was trying to do the same thing for my day job. That doesn't make a whole lot of business sense, but when you understand your calling, it makes a lot more sense. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of being an entrepreneur is that we get to define success. So for me, that means I want to give back to this community. Like, I want to see this startup ecosystem grow. And so I look for ways to build into that. So when you look at it from that lens, and maybe through the lens of the hundreds of entrepreneurs that we've got to impact through Ocean, like, I think it makes a ton of sense. And I'm just honored to have the opportunity to do that. So thanks again for this award. Thank you all for being here, and thanks to the support groups around us.